Hello, dear friends. I am just back from one of my kiddos' friends' birthday parties, and I just can't say enough about how much I love slow stitching and how much it has benefited my life. So, this is just a little bag that I put my current project in, and a cookie tin. These little butter cookies that I put my needles and thread and scissors and a little pin cushion. This is a new pin cushion that I actually just made while I was sitting at the birthday party. I had, you may remember I had a different pin cushion. It was bigger, and my little cookie tin has not been closing very well because of it. So I decided to make a little one out of this beautiful doily that I had picked up from Swanson's that was already embroidered, and I just couldn't stand to cut it up or anything and loved it too much to give it away. So I decided to make a little pin cushion, and I used some old stuffing and thread. I put a little piece there to close it up and put all my pins in it. So that just took a few minutes because I just, sewed around. So anyways, just sitting at birthday parties is not always the easiest thing. About having young kids, but there are always plenty of opportunities. So as you may remember, I've been working on these little coasters. Just cut up an old towel, and so there's a towel layer and a little layer of scrap fabric, and then I had these really pretty bits that I put in the corners with little ruffle, and then this is my dear aunt, who was an amazing fiber artist, passed away, and one of her friends sent me some strings and things, fabrics and things of hers. So I've just been adding some of those on. So these will be little coasters. So I just sat there during the birthday party as the kids played, and it was so lovely because typically I would be sort of fretting, like trying to help or make myself useful, or bugging my kid, or trying to figure out who to talk to or what to talk about. And what's so nice about having a little sewing project is that I don't have to worry about any of that. I just sat there as everyone else sort of fretted and ran around, and I just sat quietly and stitched, and people sort of came up and said hi for a little while or sat next to me for a little while, and most of the time we just talked about sewing, and it's an amazing, facilitates such nice conversations. And because I'm not doing anything that is complicated and doesn't take any concentration, I could be engaged in the conversation and just sort of quietly sitting with something to do. And usually, these parties can sort of feel long and awkward and like, when do we get to leave? And I didn't feel like I felt like I was doing something that I enjoyed while my kid was getting to do something enjoyable too. And it just made the time fly by. And I've been wanting to work on my quilt more than this lately, so I hadn't finished this project, but I've been wanting to use them as coasters. And so I was really glad to have the time to fiddle with them, and I just ended up having such nice conversations. And I think somehow, sometimes I can overthink conversations with other adults. Talking with kids is always easy for me, but I can, oh, 1 second. I forgot the tea. I'll be right back. Well, there's real life for you. I forgot I had put a pot of water on for tea. So anyways, just, yeah, just really nice to see how it is so much easier to be with other people when I have a little project to work on. And I have always felt like I didn't have the time or energy or wherewithal to like become very skilled at some sort of craft. You know, there's always those people who have their knitting with them everywhere. Or I knew a woman who always brought her embroidery with her. They were always working on like elaborate projects, and I always felt like I can't figure out that level of skill, but felt envious of their ability to have something to work on. And now I feel like this is so lovely because I don't have to know how to do anything, and I don't have to spend a whole bunch of money either. I'm just using scraps, and I've mentioned before that I get everything from either my friend who's a dressmaker who gives me all her scraps, and then there's also a store called Swanson's Fabrics. It's just www.swansonsfabrics.com, and I can go to it. It's local to me, but they do online orders, and they just take donations of fabrics and yarn and buttons, basically any kind of sewing notions, and they sell them for very inexpensive because they just don't want them to end up in a dumpster. And it's so lovely. So yeah, I just wanted to share how nice that was during today's birthday party, and how I really encourage you, if you feel so inclined, to get a little scrap of fabric, and you don't have to make anything that's actually going to be used. It can just be, like I told one of the people who asked me, oh, what are you doing? I said, it's just like a journal or like a sketchbook. I'm just sewing for sewing's sake. And it's just like a little, like those coloring books. And just get yourself a scrap of fabric. You don't have to buy anything. Most of us have some fabric hanging around. And a little bit of thread and a needle, and see how it feels to you. I've been learning about something lately, and they used the word contemplation. There's this thing called gene keys. I don't know enough about it to really talk about it, but I really was struck by the word contemplation that they use. And they talk about how, meditation is letting go of the mind, and that contemplation is like engaging the mind. So how did they give a nice analogy for it? Like, meditation is like watching the leaves float along the river, and cognition is like trying to control where the water goes on the river, and that contemplation is like getting in the river on a little inner tube and just floating with it. So not trying to control it, but also not being an observer, like being a part of it. I think that's really interesting. because I would like to learn from what I'm thinking about. And I'm just using up a bunch of these little scraps of thread, and then I'll get more thread once I've used those. Yeah. And there's lots of things to contemplate, I think I think the slow stitching really lends itself to contemplation. Being present enough to be thinking and making decisions. But also being quiet and slow enough that it's not like racing thoughts. My kiddo's been struggling lately with, he says it feels like he's zoning out when he has like memories of things that are hard and he doesn't want to think about them. And I think so many of us do that, we don't want to think about the hard things, and so we either zone out or distract ourselves with busyness. And this feels like something in between, like just putting your full focus on all the hard things can be overwhelming and scary, and most of us would never do it. But having some time to quietly do something, it's almost like when you just are present with your kiddo and not trying to, totally interact with them, but you're just being in the room and they just kind of like having you nearby. It's like we're giving that to ourselves. Just here, spending quiet time, not expecting us to perform. And I don't know about you, but the thing that, can get me in those quiet moments is thinking about all the pieces of my life that aren't the way the world tells me they're supposed to be, and just using this quiet time to say, yeah, makes sense to be a little sad about that, and we can still find peace and beauty even when the things are not going quite right. And to notice that, even when things are not the way I might choose for them to be, I'm so safe and so okay that I could sit here and sew for half an hour. That's pretty safe, And I think sometimes our systems lie to us and convey to us that unless everything on our list is done or fixed or solved, that we can't relax. And things don't really have to be all tidied on our list in order for us to take a deep breath and do something relaxing. Oh, I just got that needle and thread, and where did it go? Oh, here it is. We can still have these moments of peace when everything is not resolved. You know, I like so many people have this running list of things that are not quite right in my life. You know, whether it be that I don't maybe have the perfect job I would choose. I don't have, you know, I don't own a home. I don't have a perfect relationship with my family of origin. I have, you know, difficult things when it comes to parenting with my ex. And I don't know everything about, you know, figuring out saving for retirement or what have you. I don't have a partner. I don't have a million friends. All these things that we are told that we need to have or do or have fixed in our life. And yet, I still have enough safety and security to be able to take quiet times to do something beautiful and enjoyable. And my kid has the opportunity to go to birthday parties and play outside with his friends. And really nothing's quite as scary as it can seem when we are in our heads about it. My grandpa was an alcoholic and spent 18 years sober and was very involved with AA. And my kiddo was struggling about something this morning, and my grandma had up in her kitchen the Serenity Prayer on this little plate, and I have it now in our living room. And so we were talking through the Serenity Prayer this morning, and you know, it really just is so powerful. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. And when I first started going to Al-Anon, which was really helpful for a time, I really believed that there were a lot of things that I could have changed, and I felt very guilty that I hadn't changed them, you know, specifically things around parenting and feeling like I wish I hadn't, and that things weren't so difficult for my kiddo. And it wasn't for maybe 2 years into going to Al-Anon that I realized, you know, the things that we can change, there's only really one. And it's our behavior, you know, our actions. Because we can't change our thoughts most of the time. And we can't change our emotions even. Because when a thought comes up, that emotion just is created from that thought. And as soon as that happens, you have that thought, well, you have your situation or your experience, then you have your thought about it, and then that thought creates an emotion. Oh, here we go. Couldn't find this last little square. And voila, you are right into a um, most of us go right into a behavior, an action, right? And what's lovely is there's a lot of grace and a lot of forgiveness that can come when you realize, okay, I had an experience and it gave me this thought. And so that thought led to an emotion, and my behavior was to try to, save me from that emotion. And that little by little, the more we can look back and reflect and recognize, okay, so my, let's say, what could I experienced my parents say something negative to me about my my belief system, and that made me think that they didn't love me, which made me feel abandoned, which made me treat myself poorly or push away from that relationship. And if I can reflect on that, instead of feeling guilty, I wish I had handled that better, I can reflect on it and say, oh, that makes total sense given what I was thinking about it. So I did my best, and I'll forgive myself, and also I will give myself the opportunity to consider that, probably what was happening for my parent is that their belief system differed from mine, and they got scared that me functioning in a different belief system was going to put me in danger. And because they love me and want me to be okay, they communicated a lack of support for that belief system, and that was how they were trying to keep themselves and me safe. And so the more we reflect on past events and recognize that everything happens for a really good reason and that everyone's doing their best given the information they have, then what I think happens is little by little, you are, as you release from judgment of others and you have more forgiveness from others, you can release from judgment of yourself and have more forgiveness for yourself, which also I think leads to less of these reactive behaviors. The more we can see in past situations and unravel, okay, if I were able to slow down and see that as it was, I can see that everyone was just having fearful emotions. And so I can understand that and I can forgive that. And then it gives you more of a chance that in the real time moment, you can say, ooh, I'm feeling all this fear come up, and I'm feeling reacting and judging and pushing away or lashing out. And over time, I really think it gives you more of a chance to have grace in the moment. And that gap between the emotion and the action can get, just even recognizing there is that gap, I think, is a huge freedom and, empowering. But as that gap widens and you see how much actual choice you have in every moment, it gives you the opportunity to see a situation which scares you which you typically might lash out or push away as a result, and you can start to make choices that are more compassionate to you and the other person in real time. Now that's it's a long process to get from the recognition to the having it come up in real time. But I am starting to see that more often in my life. Not 100% of the time, of course, because I'm going to remain human while I'm in this body, right? But I think part of the wonderful thing about slow stitching is that it does slow even your conversation down. And I think there is something really wonderful about slowing down in so many ways, giving ourselves more space, more time. So, my friends, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm working on something new. It's called Gumdrop, and I'm going to try and make, I put together the material for it yesterday. I'm going to try and make a workshop that is going to have 4 separate parts that you could join me on, and it's on something called Gumdrop. I'm still learning about it. I'll put a video up when I get to that point. And the idea for it is it's going to be like a 5-part, did I say 4-part? I meant 5-part workshop on grief, on the 5 stages of grief. We all have plenty to grieve, and most of us don't have the time or even know how to facilitate our own grief. So I'm looking forward to making that, and I will definitely share it with you when I put it together. I hope you get the chance to do something sweet for yourself until we stitch together again. Lots of love.